Hi class, this is course 2, lesson 8, fractions and percents. And we're also going to talk about measurement a little bit, which are just a different way of talking about fractions. So let's get going. Okay, fractions and percents name parts of a whole. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. Fractions will describe parts of a group. And here's a fraction example for you. The numerator is 1. The denominator is 4. Okay, so this is a fraction 1/4. Top number is always the numerator, bottom number is always the denominator. That's important vocabulary for you to remember. The numerator, that top number, is going to describe how many parts have been selected or are described in the story problem. And the denominator is the number of equal parts. Okay, and equal is very important. The denominator tells you how many equal parts you have. Okay, so here's a model of this fraction. So you can see that my large square has been cut into 4 smaller squares. Those are 4 equal groups. And numerator of 1 means I have 1 of those squares. So we're going to shade in 1 of those squares. Okay, so that's 1 out of 4. Okay. And this should be a review again. Now percents are going to do the same thing. They're going to describe parts of a group, but we're going to describe the whole thing or everything as 100 parts. Okay, so percent is always out of 100. Okay, so that means your denominator is 100. Okay, so I'm going to shade this in just like the fraction, but we're going to talk about percent. So this looks like there's 4 groups, right? But since we're talking about percents, we're talking about this as being, this is 100%. Okay, so that square represents 100%. So what we need to do is take 100%, the whole thing, and divide that by how many groups are shown. So how many groups are shown? There are 4. And 100% divided by 4 is going to be 25%. So each one of those small squares is worth 25%. And we have one shaded group. One shaded group. So if we take the 25% times the number of groups that are shaded, that will equal 25%, which is also could be represented as 25 out of 100. And then this fraction we would simplify, and that would get back to 1/4. So as long as you're writing a fraction with the denominator of 100, that would be your numerator is the number or the percent that represents. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next page here. Mixed numbers are going to include a fraction and an integer. Okay, so this represents 1 unit here and 1 unit here, and we're going to do some shading here. So I want to shade in the entire first square, even though it's cut into 4 different groups. That is how many of those we have. We have 4 of those small groups there, and here we have 3. Okay, so make sure you have 7 of those small squares shaded. This group here, the first group, represents the whole thing. Okay, well, if it's all of it, we're going to write that as the integer 1. And then this fraction, this is good review here. The denominator is how many equal parts you have. So we have 4 equal parts, and then the numerator is how many have been selected, or how many are shaded, or how many are indicated. And in this case it would be 3. Now, since we have both of these groups, it's really an addition problem. So we have 1 plus 3/4, which is going to be 1 and 3/4. Okay, so anytime we have the mixed number 1, we say the word and because it's a fraction. 1 and 3/4. Okay. So that's how mixed numbers work. If you see that, or you have to model it, you know that you need to shade in one circle or one square completely to illustrate one unit. Okay, the next thing that we need to talk about is how we measure or how we count tick marks. Okay, this is an area where we struggle, so make sure you note that in your notes very clearly so that you can refer back to it. The steps are pretty simple, so if you can follow steps, you're going to be successful. So we're going to, step 1, referencing this number line. So copy all this down into your paper. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then put this example. We're going to go through step 1. Determine the number of equal groups, and that will be your denominator. So you need to look at your example here, and I'll change to blue ink so that we don't get mixed up with the point. We need to identify what value this point represents. Okay, so first we need to know how many groups are in this section, 3 to 4. So there's 1 group here, 2 groups here, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now this is not your typical like inch ruler or anything. It's just a number line that has been split into 5 equal groups. Notice if you count the tick marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, there are only 4 tick marks. So the number of equal groups is really the spaces. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we know, I'm going to write this over here, we know that our denominator is 5. Now, step 2, how many groups are to the left of the point? That's going to be your numerator. So how many groups are to the left? There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our numerator, 4. Which integer is the point between? Okay, so the point lives between 3 and 4, right? So, and that would be, which integer is the point between? Boy, that's poorly worded. This should be which integer is to the left of the point. Okay, sorry about that. I'll fix that for the next go round. Which integer is to the left of the point? Okay, that'll be your whole number. So we're looking right here. It's the 3. And that's your value. That is the value of this point. That point represents 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4 fifths.